Today, we're talking about a single ship that, no exaggeration, completely changed the world. This is the story of HMS Warrior, a vessel so powerful, so ahead of its time, it basically redefined what it meant to rule the seas.
And here she is. Just look at her. Launched way back in 1860, HMS Warrior was the very first iron-hulled, armored warship built for the open ocean. And get this, she was bigger, faster, and way tougher than anything else afloat. The moment she hit the water, pretty much every other navy on Earth became instantly obsolete. She wasn't just an improvement, she was a total game changer.
But here's the twist. Even though this ship was the most powerful weapon on the planet, Britain's own Prime Minister, a guy named Lord Palmerston, was, let's just say, not impressed. He actually called her a fine yacht, but not a proper warship. So what was going on? How could the ultimate weapon also be seen as this deeply flawed machine? Well, that's the story we're going to unpack.
To understand the Warrior, our story actually has to start not in Britain, but across the English Channel, with a national security crisis that absolutely gripped the public. They called it the French Ironclad Panic.
See, this slide really captures this illusion of power Britain had. It's 1858, and the British think their Royal Navy, with all its new steam-powered wooden ships, is totally untouchable. But that feeling of dominance, it was resting on a knife's edge. Because the French, under Napoleon III, had secretly stopped building wooden ships 3 years earlier. They were betting everything on a radical new idea.
And this was it. In 1859, the French launched La Gloire. Now, she was a wooden ship, but she was covered in thick iron plates. All of a sudden, cannonballs that would have turned a wooden ship into splinters would just bounce off. The Royal Navy's entire fleet was suddenly terrifyingly vulnerable. The whole game had changed, like overnight.
You can imagine the shockwave of panic that sent through Britain. It was a real Sputnik moment for them. The public was terrified. This cartoon here captures it perfectly. There was this frantic national debate about spending more on defense. The newspapers were just filled with these horror stories about a potential French invasion. The government was under huge pressure to do something, and do it fast.
And this wasn't just hype from the press. The fear was real, and it went all the way to the top. The British Admiralty itself warned that within a year, France could have enough of these ironclads to literally seize control of the English Channel. For a nation whose entire identity was built on its naval power, this was an existential threat. So, faced with this massive threat, Britain didn't just decide to play catch-up. No, they decided to leapfrog the competition entirely. Their response would, once again, change everything.
And this was their answer. HMS Warrior, a ship designed not just to be a copy of La Gloire, but to be its complete undoing. The whole goal was to create something so technologically advanced, so overwhelmingly powerful, that it would make the French ironclad and every other ship out there look like a toy.
First, let's just talk about the scale. She was a staggering 420 feet long. That made her, by far, the largest warship in the world, a true titan of the seas that just dwarfed everything else. Then there was the speed. Her steam engines could push her to over 14 knots, which was way faster than any enemy she might face. And in naval warfare, speed is everything. It means you get to decide when and where a battle happens. Warrior could chase down any ship it wanted or escape from any fleet.
And finally, the armor. Just listen to this. She had a central section, a citadel, protected by 4.5 inches of solid wrought iron. And behind that, 18 inches of teak wood. Tests proved she was basically invulnerable to the most powerful cannons they had back then.
So here's the crucial point. When you put them side by side, Warrior was just a completely different beast. La Gloire was an armored wooden ship, kind of like an upgrade to the old ships of the line. But Warrior, she was built from the ground up with an iron hull. She was faster, way more powerful, and designed for a global role. It wasn't just an evolution, it was a total revolution.
But a revolutionary ship like this came with a revolutionary set of problems. The perfect weapon on paper turned out to be a lot more complicated and a lot messier in the real world.
Okay, so the heart of the problem was a total confusion of purpose. The immediate threat was right there at home, defending the English Channel. But what did Britain build? A long-range, globe-trotting cruiser. It's that classic jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none problem. And by trying to be everything at once, they ended up with some really serious design compromises. And you can see those compromises right here. That famous iron armor, it only covered the middle of the ship. The front and the back, the bow and the stern, were completely unarmored. They were totally vulnerable. A single lucky shot could have destroyed her steering gear and left her dead in the water. And this is why the Prime Minister called her a fine yacht. She was beautiful and strong in the middle, but dangerously fragile at the ends.
You know, building this brand new technology was also a total nightmare. The private shipyards really struggled. There were huge delays, the costs went through the roof, and there were constant arguments. The iron plates for the armor kept failing quality tests, and thanks to some clever loopholes in the contracts, it was almost impossible to hold the builders responsible. This revolution was proving to be very messy and very, very expensive.
And right as Britain was trying to deal with all these issues, news started to trickle in from across the Atlantic. There was a completely new kind of ironclad being used in the American Civil War, one that threatened to make even the Warrior's design obsolete before it even got started.
Meet the USS Monitor. I mean, look at the difference. The Warrior was this huge, high-sided target with its cannons all lined up on the side. But the Monitor, it was this small, low-profile vessel that was barely visible above the water, and it had a revolutionary steam-powered rotating gun turret. It was purpose-built to be an ironclad killer. Now, the British Duke of Somerset dismissed it as something between a raft and diving bell, but its designer knew exactly what it was: a direct challenge to ships like the Warrior.
So with all these flaws and the threat of even newer designs on the horizon, you'd think the Warrior's story would be a short one, but it took one last, really surprising turn. And here it is, the great irony of her entire career. The most powerful, most feared warship on the planet never once fought in a battle. It never had to. She was so overwhelmingly superior, so far ahead of any rival, that no other country even dared to challenge her. Her real power was in pure deterrence. But of course, technology moves incredibly fast. Within about a decade, new ships with turrets and armor all over made Warrior obsolete. She was pulled from service in 1883, and eventually she was stripped down and ended up as a floating oil platform in Wales for 50 years. What a sad end for such a revolutionary ship. But then, in 1979, she was saved from the scrap heap, and an incredible journey of restoration began.
And today she sits beautifully restored in Portsmouth, a museum ship and a living monument. She's a tangible link to that exact moment in history when wood and sail gave way to iron and steam, forever changing what it meant to have power on the seas.
And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought, right? The Warrior's biggest impact came from preventing fights, not winning them. Her power was all about her potential. So it makes you wonder, what's out there today that shapes our world not by being used, but simply by existing? What is the HMS Warrior of our time?